I'm Todd Townshend. I'm serving as Bishop of the Diocese of Huron, which is all the Anglican churches in this part of southwestern Ontario.
Which is how many do we know?
It's about 125 communities.
Okay.
More than that, some of them have several buildings or congregations within them. About that number, yeah.
So the south end is Sarnia and the north end is?
It goes Windsor along Lake Erie, Kitchener-Waterloo, up to Tobermory and back.
Just a small area, all the way up to Tobermory.
Yeah.
Good enough. Can you talk a little bit about some of the main factors that had the Diocese of Huron decide to partner with Relevant, and maybe a bit about how you met Relevant Trinity Centers Foundation?
It was a couple of things. One was through personal connections, and having known Graham Singh for some time in a few other contexts, primarily around theological education. Right. But also becoming bishop, the stewardship challenge of being a property owner in our churches and the costs and the opportunities of that was sort of priority for me. So I knew that we were going to need some guidance and some professional expertise in certain areas, and the connection was made with Relevant at that time. But the point for our work in the diocese was when I became a bishop, and when we were starting to come out of the pandemic, I had sort of promised beforehand that we would address the property challenges. Yes. And so bringing in somebody could help us do that, because we have expertise, but we needed that outside voice who would be able to come into the room and go home and stimulate, advise, but not be part of our governance decision-making process. Yeah. So that's when I started to say we needed, and Graham, like I said, Graham was able to adapt to what we needed, because working on a sort of portfolio approach hadn't happened very much, at least a diocese-wide one. So it kind of evolved. It's hard to kind of pinpoint that exactly. I think the portfolio approach is actually key to the success of it, right? So that instead of having to achieve every outcome on every single site, we have the freedom to look at the outcomes of the diocese as a whole and to match what best suits each site in a way that achieves the overall missional goals, right? So. Yeah, and I was hoping for some efficiencies and wisdom around, because it is a system and a network. If every individual congregation tried to do this sort of like with blinders on, we would make the same mistakes in different places. We'd also have the same kind of things. So to have that kind of shared, to create a network of conversation around it was part of the goal. Right. It's a big task, all this property, and alongside, of course, the main task of the spiritual life as well, right? So. Yeah. When you were originally contracting Relevant, what did you imagine that the work would look like, and what does it look like, the work that we're doing with you today? When we started, some of the experiences that Relevant Trinity Centers at the time had was in Montreal at St. Jacques and other places, but the model in some ways was what to do with properties once there's nobody in them. So how to repurpose for the sake of social good a property that is no longer being used how it was. And at the beginning, I said that we had some properties and we're likely to have some properties like that, but the majority of our need was where there were still small communities in a building that was becoming onerous in some way or another, and that should be shared, that was underutilized in some way or another, but there was still a community there, which is a different kind of challenge and opportunity, because the decision-making body in our church is local and it's supported by a network. So when there was still a community there, I said to Graham and others, can you help us figure out the kind of opportunities that we might not see that are before us, and what expertise would help us get there. Like the one we're sitting in today. That's right, yes, indeed. So we're in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, which has undergone a dramatic transformation the last little while, some of which had been pre-planned and some of which was in collaboration with Relevant. But
How do you feel that the social impact of St. Paul's Cathedral might now change because of this new approach and obviously this new physical plant that we have around us?
Well, one of the things that's happening, it's many leveled, and some of it we don't know yet. But the desire at the beginning was to, in the simplest way, is to open it up to the community for the work of the community that seemed to fit in a partnership. So it is a bit of a shift for a congregation with a single purpose and a designed purpose building to start to imagine other uses for it. So it needed some renovation and some change. But the basic metaphor I think I'd use for it is this idea of opening up a space, opening up the doors, becoming willing to engage with partners and people that you haven't engaged with before, and their own missions, but to sort of be vulnerable to a sense of possibility and to see what comes from it. So this isn't foreign to Christian communities, but we had come through a very stable number of decades where new opportunities weren't even sought. We knew what we wanted to do, where and when and how. Now we want to do some new things, and it required some changes to a building. So this is a very large space, 8,000 square feet, that was almost totally filled with pews for sitting, and it was honed perfectly for that one purpose. Now that it's open and the floor has been rebuilt and there's some new art, including on the floor in this labyrinth, it becomes a more enticing space into which people can come. And I personally like the idea of, the walls have beautiful windows, the space has all kinds of art, music has resonated in here for years, of course, along with prayer. But it's also a whole bunch of things could happen in here that we haven't pictured yet, and we want to see what those are and see how they fit with what we do. So this is a really good example of that. There's other parts of the building too that are, being redeveloped to become more of a community, a creative hub, and it's all part of the same impulse to cultivate creativity, possibility, and partnership with people we haven't worked with before.
And it brings you into the center of a conversation in downtown London about how you bring people back into the core of London and how you use that to reinvigorate a community that's experienced a lot of challenges post-COVID. And of course, you're already doing the work in your soup kitchens and your care for the street-involved people here, but I think this is a radical act of hospitality and invitation, right? Yeah,
it is. And even just before we started talking, there are people who came in through the doors to explore, and who knows what they will think of to have happen here. But it is all on the foundation of caring for the most vulnerable people, and the fact that all downtowns are being challenged by the kind of pain that you see expressed in people's lives, the need for homes for the most vulnerable, and all that has been part of the project as well. People need beauty along with food and prayer and connection. And the two can come together at times. Yeah.
Relevant expresses what you were talking about with the building as listen to the building, listen to the congregation, listen to the community. And I think that's what St. Paul's and other Anglican diocese churches have done a really good job of, is putting those things together, I think about St. James Ingersoll and, a brand new downtown church, and the way in which that they saw that their old building was maybe separating them from the community in a way that that didn't express their desire to be directly connected with their neighbors, right? So that, I think, is a really neat project too.
That project in Ingersoll, Ontario, is a great example of it going down some pathways that we wouldn't have anticipated, but you follow them. And that's a listening process, but also bringing proposals, as I say, possibilities, because the people involved always have the agency, the ability to say, yes, this is something we want to do, but they had possibilities. So now it's a Main Street storefront kind of part of revitalizing a downtown of a smaller community here. They had been in a big stone church that was really taxing, as much as they loved it, on them in many ways. They had sold that before my time working with them. and just faithfully for several years found their way to this new home that we're going to be able to celebrate soon, that will allow, again, all kinds of flexibility for the things that might develop over time. And it took a lot of tenacity, a lot of support, but that's where Relevin came and kept bringing, didn't give up with them, and kept bringing new possibilities, spoke to municipal people, to granting agencies, did some of the real estate work that's hard to do for a small community, and just filled the gaps and what they needed to reach their goals.
Yeah, and as some of these smaller cities and towns are being called upon to become something new in light of the housing challenges and needing to find new spaces for people, it's great to see how you're trying to align the Anglican Diocese to be there alongside newly imagined communities, right?
Yeah,
so.
Yep. And of course the financial aspect is part of the viability and vitality of a community. You have to have resources. And when they become scarce, the creative use of property can help fund not just your own activities, but these shared ones as well. So we able to bring, in many cases, the property possibility to the people who have the development capacity, and then you create something that wouldn't have been created otherwise.
Okay, so speaking a little bit about the finances, what's the return of investment been on your work with Relevin over, what has it been, 2 years and a bit now?
Yeah. Well, it's been, I've really appreciated the way that the resources we've brought to it have been pooled for needs in various places. So there's been a flexibility to the kind of use of the investment that we've put into it. And the return on that will vary from place to place. I've been fine with the fact that sometimes the work that Relevin helps us do doesn't turn out in the thing we thought we wanted to happen, but it does create resolve to do this other thing. From my perspective, that's been great. That might not be a return on investment that you thought would happen, whereas in other places it's been magnified in another direction, where the redevelopment or the sale of a property has allowed for a redistribution of resources to other places. And in those kind of situations, depending on property values mostly, but it's been really good, like a 10-to-1 kind of ratio of return to your investment,
to the original investment
on it. In other places, it's harder to measure because it's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
It's one example in South London here, it's going to be over many decades that the return happens a bit at a time, and that's, I think, a healthy thing too. Not everything bears fruit at once, but in all three of those ways, it's been valuable.
You and I'll have to sit here 10 years from now and say, what was the return on investment on the slower ones, right? The ones that were emerging through time in the ways that they're meant to, right? Yeah. Not everything's instantaneous. Yeah. A return on investment too can be thought of in beyond money and beyond the direct mission of the church. I think we've done some interesting things in regards to housing, and I think that's been a direction that you and the church has felt really comfortable with, trying to help your neighbor and do some outreach on that. So you talk a little bit about that direction? Yeah,
the unhoused in our communities are a huge concern for all of us for different reasons. I mean, from a spiritual perspective, you might say God would not want people to not have a safe home, a place on which they can build their life. In other ways, it's a harm prevention kind of approach, and there's all kinds of things in between. And so there's a lot of interest in having this happen for people. We have found just here, almost like on either side of us, on this property, a redevelopment of almost 100 in partnership with a couple of really creative and strong groups, 100 affordable housing places in a mixed development, and further down south in the city, a potential development that's on the way for another 100 or more there. We have other places in our area where there's a partnership with the municipality, where in these two sites there's going to be potentially about 200 new affordable kind of homes built on properties that we've been involved with. So that's very satisfying. In one case at least, it was a church that closed, so it's a very heartbreaking loss, there's a lot of grief involved, but when the new purpose is something as life-saving as that, it becomes satisfying, something to celebrate in the midst of grief, and people move on to new places and find life there as well. So there's been some very big wins for all of us in those regards.
Yeah, yourselves and you and the staff have been very open to these partnership approaches and dreaming new visions along with RE11 and shooting for something that maybe seems a little impossible, but working together and seeing what emerges. You know, I think about here at the Cathedral District with Homes Unlimited and Sifton and the ways in which all those people came to the table and brought their gifts forward to help everybody to get to where they were going at the same time as you were doing this.
Yeah, and
right?
in that case, they really drove that movement to have that happen, those two organizations. And we were here interested, and it just all came together quickly. Other times you got to do a lot of work. So timing is everything. I think one of the things that's important for us is to, and this goes back to the question about how the conversation got started in the first place. Yeah. There's the value of social purpose and repurposing for the sake of a community as a whole, not just a religious community's mission. But there's also for us a sense that, you know, our resources are mostly inherited, that they've been given as gifts to a community for the purposes of that community in that time and place. And so we inherit these gifts that sometimes become expensive gifts, but it's always a real asset in many ways. So you feel a responsibility in a changing time to figure out what those resources are supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So that's been in some ways the overarching challenge and joy of this, is that while it's difficult work, it still is a sort of a sense of appreciation for gifts that have been given, an inheritance that you want to enjoy for your own life, but also leave for others in a new way. And that's part of why the transformations are ultimately, I think, very good for many people.
Yeah, I'll often speak about that you're not just trustees for the church, you're trustees for the future, right? That as some of the largest holders of not-for-profit land in the country, it really matters what decisions you make next and how you use your gifts for the good of the community as a whole, right?
Yeah, and impact now is a big part of it. It needs to have its impact for this time and place, as well as setting up the future.
That's awesome. How has working with RE11 helped the diocese to navigate some of these challenges?
Well, I think in terms of vision, so being able to picture things is probably the biggest. So the imagination sometimes needs to be expanded. You just don't know that things are possible that are, but it's also good to rule out things that aren't. So expertise is the other part of that. To say, okay, that might be a nice dream, but here's how much that costs. Okay, let's not do that. That kind of information gathering, just expertise within people from their own experiences. RE11 brings quite a number of people to the table around that, and can find them also. Very good network of people who can be brought into the conversation to help with both vision and expertise and execution if you get that far down the road. I will say a lot of the times the execution is kind of left to the local community, because at that point they say, we can run with this, we got this, thank you. Other times it's a more complicated thing, and there are phases, like here, there are other phases still to come, and we need to bring that expertise back in.
Yeah, I think each project is really unique, and that's why you have to connect with the community and the congregation and yourself and ask what's meant to happen here. Right. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, and obviously the cathedral solution is not the solution for Ingersoll, right?
Right, yeah.
Those are different things.
Totally different, yeah.
Talking more broadly about the state of the church and faith properties in Canada, what lessons do you feel other groups could take from your work with RE11, or are you at a place yet of the lessons?
Yeah. You know, I think that's being done in different ways and different places. I think the opportunities are quite different. If you just take Canada, for example, property value alone varies wildly from place to place. And there's so many remote areas that some of the things that you might say in this part of the world will just seem silly to people who live in that area. Yep. But there are some common principles, I think, that are kind of would resonate positively with their situations, and they could transfer what good comes of it for them. I mean, that's been a big part of how I see the dynamic. Sometimes I'll be in a room with this happening, and I just see it starts to, I can't help but use a musical term, the resonance starts to happen,
yes.
right? The sympathetic resonance, not dissonance. And then that's where the creative juices start happening, and it gets its own flavor in each locality. But I think that I would love to see us convene conversations across Anglican churches, but across all kinds of not-for-profit kind of property holders around the ways in which those inherited assets can serve more people. And I hope we can do that, and 11 would be a good organization to help coordinate something like that. And
you'd be great to help lead that, so let's make that happen. It's an incredible amount of work for 2 years.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You must be getting tired.
Well, I mean, I'm not actually. I'm encouraged by it, and I find it at times it's exhilarating, and that exhilaration isn't something you can handle all the time. However, it's very life-giving, and when that happens, I find it. What I would say is you do need moments like we're in right now, where you take a bit of a pause to consolidate what you've done.
Yeah.
And then so I think it'll probably come in waves a bit, and that's probably healthy.
I think about it a little bit with some of the churches too, that we've soaked the earth a little bit. We've put some good ideas into the ground, and we're just going to let them work their way up through the roots.
That's a great bit.
And when they start to get buds and leaves, we'll come back.
Right.
Right? Yeah. And we'll know, well, you'll know, and hopefully you'll tell us when that moment is right again.
And sticking with the metaphor, I'm not a gardener, but I have done pruning, and I would think that that's another piece of it that you need to see as the whole of the work, is that sometimes you just see pruning. It's a fairly aggressive act, and people who know what they're doing, you think, oh, really?
You've gone so far.
Yeah, and yet that creates the possibility for growth. So again, back to the sort of expertise part. Some of it's in our community, some of it's not. In order to see the growth, you have to do some of that work, and I'm glad people have the courage to do it.
I think there's an element of experiment to that too. You're trying something that not very many dioceses have tried.
Yeah.
And so that's courageous work, and we really appreciate you joining us for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.